What if the greatest ship ever built was doomed from the start? In the early years of the 20th century, humanity was brimming with a powerful sense of optimism and progress. It was an age of invention, where steam and steel were reshaping the world at a breathtaking pace. In the great shipyards of Belfast, Ireland, a testament to this ambition was taking form. Here, thousands of skilled hands worked tirelessly, riveting together the massive steel plates that would create the largest moving object ever built by man. This was the Royal Mail ship Titanic, a vessel conceived not merely for transport, but as a bold declaration of mankind's dominion over the natural world. It was to be a symbol of luxury, speed, and, most importantly, safety. The air on the day of its launch, May 31st, 1911, was electric with excitement and pride. A crowd of over 100,000 people gathered to witness the spectacle, their faces turned upward in awe. The ship was a magnificent sight, a gleaming giant of black and white, with 4 towering funnels reaching towards the sky, promising power and stability. This was not just a ship, it was a floating city, a masterpiece of engineering that represented the very pinnacle of the industrial age. The belief that the Titanic was unsinkable was rooted in the ship's revolutionary design. The engineers had incorporated the very latest in maritime safety technology. At the heart of this system was the ship's hull, which was divided into 16 separate, watertight compartments. These heavy steel barriers could be closed with the flip of a single switch on the ship's bridge, sealing the compartments from one another in a matter of seconds. This system was so advanced that a leading maritime publication of the day, The Shipbuilder, declared it practically unsinkable. This phrase was seized upon by the press and the public, becoming a powerful and ultimately tragic mantra. The ship's immense size also contributed to this feeling of invincibility. On April 10, 1912, the port of Southampton, England, was a scene of great anticipation and excitement. The Titanic, gleaming and majestic, was ready to begin its first and only voyage. The ship was a microcosm of the rigid social structure of the era. In first class, some of the wealthiest and most famous people in the world came aboard. There was John Jacob Astor IV, an American real estate magnate, and his young wife. Their quarters were the epitome of elegance, with private suites, lavishly decorated lounges, and even a Parisian-style cafe. They could enjoy a heated swimming pool, a Turkish bath, a gymnasium, and a squash court. And then, deep in the lower decks, was third class, or steerage. Here, hundreds of immigrants from across Europe were crowded together, their worldly possessions packed into single trunks, leaving behind poverty and uncertainty in search of a new life in America. For the first few days of its voyage, the Titanic lived up to every one of its promises. It moved across the Atlantic with a steady and reassuring grace, its powerful engines creating only a faint, distant hum. The weather was beautiful, with clear skies and remarkably calm seas. The ship's wireless Marconi room was a constant hub of activity, but not with messages of danger. Instead, it was flooded with personal telegrams from the wealthy first-class passengers. On Sunday, April 14th, the wireless operators received a series of warnings from other ships, reporting large fields of ice directly in the Titanic's path. One of the most critical warnings came from a nearby vessel, the Mesaba, which detailed a large ice field of bergs and pack ice. This vital message was set aside by the busy wireless operator. Another warning came from the steamer Californian, but was curtly dismissed with the reply, "Shut up, I am busy." As evening fell, the temperature dropped sharply. The sea remained eerily calm, like a polished sheet of black glass. This stillness was, in itself, a danger. Without wind, there were no small waves to break against the base of an iceberg, which would have created a line of white foam visible from a distance. At 11:40 p.m., in the profound darkness of the moonless night, the lookout Frederick Fleet saw it. A shape darker than the darkness looming directly ahead. It was an iceberg. He immediately sounded the ship's bell 3 times and telephoned the bridge, shouting, "Iceberg, right ahead!" First Officer William Murdoch reacted instantly, ordering the ship hard a starboard and signaling the engine room to put the massive engines in reverse. But the Titanic was a behemoth that could not be turned quickly. For what felt like an eternity, the ship continued to bear down on the mountain of ice. It did not seem like a catastrophic collision. To many on board, it felt like only a slight shudder, a subtle, grinding vibration. Below the waterline, however, the damage was devastating. As the immense pressure buckled the ship's steel plates, it popped the rivets holding them together. This created a series of smaller openings along a 300-foot stretch of the hull. Seawater began pouring into the ship, instantly flooding the first 6 of the 16 watertight compartments. The ship's designer, Thomas Andrews, was on board for the maiden voyage. After assessing the damage, he knew it could stay afloat if the first 4 compartments were flooded, but not 6. The unsinkable Titanic, he informed the captain, was doomed. It had, at most, 2 hours to live. Once the terrible reality was understood, a fatal sense of calm and confusion began to permeate the vessel. There was no general alarm bell, no centralized system to inform passengers of the mortal danger. The crew was instructed to rouse passengers politely to avoid causing panic. As a result, many people simply did not believe the ship was in any real trouble. This initial lack of urgency had disastrous consequences for launching the lifeboats. The Titanic had 20 lifeboats total, enough for only about half the people on board. Many boats were launched partially empty. The first lifeboat left with only 28 people, despite having capacity for 65. Another left with just 12 people. As the minutes ticked by, the Titanic's bow sank deeper into the frigid Atlantic. The angle of the deck grew steadily steeper, making it increasingly difficult to stand. The initial calm gave way to growing dread, and then outright panic. By this point, all launchable lifeboats had departed, leaving over 1,500 people stranded. The ship's band, led by Wallace Hartley, famously continued to play music on the deck, a final act of courage intended to soothe the terrified souls around them. The great ship's final moments were both terrifying and spectacular. As water reached the bridge, the stern rose high out of the ocean, exposing the massive propellers. The lights flickered once and went out, plunging the scene into darkness. Then came the most terrifying sound. With a deafening roar, the Titanic broke in two between the third and fourth funnels. The forward section plunged beneath the waves, heading for the ocean floor 2.5 miles below. The stern section settled back briefly before beginning its final vertical descent. At 2:20 a.m. on April 15, 1912, less than 3 hours after hitting the iceberg, the great ship was gone. While the Titanic was sinking, its wireless operators had been desperately sending distress signals. The closest ship was the Carpathia. Upon receiving the distress call, Captain Arthur Rostron immediately turned his vessel around and ordered the engines pushed to their absolute limit, a heroic dash through the perilous ice field. The ship Californian was much closer, perhaps less than 20 miles away. Its crew saw strange white rockets being fired, but failed to understand their significance. Tragically, they did not wake their wireless operator, and the ship remained stationary until morning, a silent witness to a catastrophe it might have been able to mitigate. Just before dawn, the Carpathia arrived at the Titanic's last known position. The scene was horrifying. The ocean was dotted with icebergs, and floating amongst the debris were the Titanic's few lifeboats, filled with shivering, grief-stricken survivors. The crew worked with incredible efficiency, hoisting the 705 survivors onto their decks. The scale of the loss was staggering. Over 1,500 people had perished in the disaster. The survivors, huddled on the decks of the Carpathia, could only watch in stunned silence as the sun rose over a calm, empty sea where the grandest ship in the world had been just hours before. The rescue ship, now dangerously overcrowded, turned its course for New York, carrying with it the living remnants of the tragedy. Its wireless operator began transmitting the first lists of survivors to an anxious world, while also confirming the terrible news that the RMS Titanic had been lost to the sea. For more than 70 years, the Titanic lay undisturbed in its deep, dark grave, its exact location a mystery. It was not until September 1st, 1985, that a joint French-American expedition led by Dr. Robert Ballard finally succeeded. Using a revolutionary deep-sea submersible named Argo, they captured the first haunting images of the wreck. The ghost of the great ship had been found. Subsequent explorations revealed a scene of both solemn beauty and utter devastation. The ship lies in two main pieces, separated by nearly half a mile of debris field. The seabed is scattered with thousands of artifacts, poignant reminders of the lives that were lost. The Titanic disaster served as a powerful catalyst for change. International maritime laws were overhauled. The first International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea was held in 1914. New regulations mandated that all ships carry enough lifeboats for every person on board, maintain 24-hour radio watch, and practice regular lifeboat drills. The story of the Titanic endures as a cautionary tale, a profound reminder of the dangers of human hubris and our over-reliance on technology. It teaches us that nature remains a force that commands respect, and as it rests in the eternal darkness of the abyss, the Titanic continues to teach us a vital lesson, that we must never take safety for granted.